From Atlanta, this is CNN Newsroom with Linda Kincaid.
An Iranian official says the latest round of Israeli airstrikes targeted Iran's nuclear research complex in Isfahan. Iranian state media says a strike at a residential building in the city of Qom killed 2 people and injured 4 others. The city is close to Iran's four-door fuel enrichment plant. In Israel, people took shelter from the latest Iranian missile launches. Iran is denying Israel's claim that it's been forced to cut back on missile launches because of dwindling stock. A senior Iranian official tells CNN that Iran's using more advanced precision missiles and doesn't need to fire as many of them. In Holon, just outside of Tel Aviv, a building caught fire. Israel says it was hit by shrapnel from an intercepted missile. And on Friday, European diplomats held talks with Iran in Geneva, hoping Iran will return to nuclear talks with the US. Well, President Trump says his decision on whether or not the US will strike Iran could come in less than 2 weeks. CNN senior White House correspondent Christian Holmes has more.
President Donald Trump stopping to talk to reporters about the conflict between Israel and Iran on the way to his New Jersey golf club in Bedminster, saying this about calling Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and asking him to stop the fighting for at least a brief period to bring Iran to the table.
Well, I think it's very hard to make that request right now. If somebody's winning, it's a little bit harder to do than if somebody's losing. But we're ready, willing, and able, and we've been speaking to Iran, and we'll see what happens.
And now this, of course, again, was in response to the Iranians saying that they would talk to the U.S. directly about diplomatic conversations, about a possible nuclear deal, but only if the U.S. got Israel to stop its attacks on Iran. So it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. Now, President Trump was also asked about this 2-week period. He said it was enough time to get people to come to their senses, but also said that was the maximum amount of time, indicating that something could happen in terms of U.S. involvement before the 2 weeks was over. And one more interesting thing to point out that happened is he once again went against his director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who back in March said that Iran was not developing a nuclear weapon, saying she's wrong. Emphatically, she is wrong. Of course, we have been reporting that there's been somewhat of a rift, at least from President Trump, when it comes to his DNI, because he believes that she is, quote, off message. Kristen Holmes, CNN, the White House.
Iran says a U.S. strike against it would violate the United Nations Charter. Iran's ambassador to the UN addressed the UN Security Council Friday. He said Iran would, quote, exercise its right to self-defense.
Madam President, Iran has exercised its inherent right to self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. Our response have complied fully with international law, including humanitarian law. We have taken all necessary precautions to protect civilians. Iran will continue to exercise this right as long as the Security Council fails to discharge its primary responsibility under the Charter and until the Israeli aggression is fully and unequivocally terminated.
Israel's ambassador lashed out at his Iranian counterpart when he took the floor after him. He accused Iran of pursuing what he called a genocidal agenda, adding that the Iranian ambassador is not a diplomat, but a wolf pretending to be one. The Israeli representative also said his country is doing everybody's bidding by striking Iran.
We are doing what this council should have done long ago. We are acting where the international community hesitated. We are stopping a threat that endangered the entire world. Though our homes, our families, and our children are under threat, we will not stop. Not until Iran's nuclear threat is dismantled.
Iran's foreign minister is in Istanbul today. The foreign ministers of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation are meeting there. These are pictures, live pictures from there right now. They're focusing on Israel's strikes against Iran and the war in Gaza. Linda Pastor spoke about that meeting with SANAM VAKIL, the director of the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House. She told me the countries taking part in it have a clear priority.
Well, I think right now for the countries of the Middle East, the number one priority is to push for de-escalation if not a ceasefire, and encourage all pathways back to the negotiating table. The worst possible outcome for the region, all Arab states, and Turkey includes the war spreading and involving counterattacks or strikes across the Middle East. So this meeting today in Istanbul, bringing together the Organization of Islamic Countries, is a very strong signal, and important to see what communiques come out, that the region stands opposed to this war and is looking for de-escalation.
You've written extensively about Iran's domestic political landscape. Is this conflict likely to strengthen the regime, particularly in light of Israel's suggestions that it could lead to regime change in Tehran?
Well, obviously, this is a conflict, a war that is still very heated, and it's hard to see how, in this moment, the Iranian structure will change. I think it will change inevitably because it was always on the course of change. With Iran's supreme leader being 86 years old, change was coming. But regime change with an aerial operation from another country isn't likely in the cards. What I think the Israeli government is trying to achieve is to weaken and destabilize the Iranian government in the hope that there is unrest and fragmentation inside Iran. And in this moment, that is also unlikely. The Iranian government, of course, is trying to build solidarity inside, using rhetoric and trying to build momentum, calling this sort of a national struggle. And Iranians from across the spectrum, of course, feel very angry that they are being subject to war. It doesn't mean that they have suddenly re-legitimized their government, but we have to wait and see how things unfold. It's very dangerous for Iranians themselves. Obviously, the regime is in a very fragile and difficult situation, but the spillover effect of unrest in Iran for the region is also dangerous, and that is what's driving this meeting in Istanbul.